Alright, so we're done modeling the values for our little character right here. Again, and the artwork is by Robert Guthrie, and you guys can check out his website at www.pixeltoonsinc.com, and you'll see more great work over there. Now, again, the way that we did this is we created a sphere using gray, and then with the dodge and the burn, we created a highlight, a midtone, and a shadow. Then we took this sphere and we pasted into the different components that we had separated using our channels. And we also have a video for this. And once all our selections were saved as channels, we went ahead and we pasted that sphere. And then using the free transform tool under edit free transform, I'm going to go to edit free transform, we were able to move around the shape so it would fit one of the shapes that we had created. And then with the right mouse button inside of our transformation, we used warp. You can also go to this button right here for warp. And then we moved the outside of our warp to follow the shape of each selection. And once we were happy with the outer shape, we moved the inner wireframe so that we could move the highlight and the shadow whatever we wanted it. Again, you move the outside first and then you move the inner wireframe. I'm going to hit validate and undo. And again, the reason why we did this is because instead of trying to figure out where the light source comes from for every component of our character, we just created this sphere, pasted into, and therefore we have a value painting of all the components. We know where the light hits on all the components, like the ears, the helmet, the radio, the tail, using something with a known light source, such as a sphere. And then we painted shadows where shadows would live. For example, this part of the helmet gives a shadow to the mask. So I would go to my channels, selected the face, and then I would use my brush tool, and holding the Alt key, I would sample a color that was dark enough to be a shadow, and then I would paint on my layer, right, like so. And I can create my shadows and all the different parts for my characters. Again, we can also create highlight areas where we want them to be. For example, right here at the edge of our piece where the light hits it, to add more dimensionality to our character. We can go here and paint more highlights. Here are some shadows that I created on the torso based on the helmet, shadows of the arm on the body, and on and on. So once our character is done, what we have to do is we have to create color for our character. Now, the easiest way of creating color is to use a gradient and put it right on top of our value study for our character. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use our layers modes. Okay, we will find that right above the lock settings right here. And those layers modes are the same as the tools modes. Again, the tools and the layers share the same modes. And once I select the shape of our silhouette and I paint with a gradient, I will go over what all the modes do. So first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go to channels and I'm going to look for my silhouette. And again, command or control on a PC and click on the thumbnail for that channel so that we can create a selection. I'm gonna go to layers, create a new layer. Here's my layer. I'm gonna call this layer color. And I'm going to select the gradient tool. The shortcut for the gradient tool is the letter G. However, if you don't have the gradient tool at the very top, it's because you either have the paint bucket or the 3D material drop tool selected. And you can either select the spectrum, which is this very first rainbow, or the rainbow on transparent. I'm going to select the first one, the spectrum. And the way the gradient tool works, right now I'm on an empty layer. So when I click and drag, I'm going to create my gradation from the top to the bottom. And again, please do not hesitate to check out our video tutorial on the gradient tools. Now, once I've created the color, what I'm going to do is deselect. That's under select, deselect. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move through all the different color modes that we have right here for our layers. And eventually we're going to find one where it will tweak the color affecting what's underneath it so that we can find the color that we want. This is a really fast way of finding specific colors instead of having to guess what the red will do to a grayscale value study, what the blue will do to it, and on and on. If we go and open this right here, you will notice that our modes right here are divided into specific groups. The first one is called the normal. So if the opacity is 100, the color on the top will affect our gray study just like solid regular paint. The dissolve is something that works better when you have a gradient from a solid color to transparency. It's almost the same effect as a dither gradient. So instead of having little flakes that go from 100% to 0% opacity, they will be very compact solid dots in the shape of squares that are very separate apart, creating a visual representation of gradation. But everything will be 100% opaque. The second group that we have are the darkening modes. Darken, multiply, and color burn, and on and on. So as you can see, these modes will darken what's below them. And because we don't have pure black, these colors will darken whatever is below them. However, as you can see on our ink drawing mode is multiply, which means that whatever is white will darken whatever is below. And because white cannot darken anything, white will become our transparency. And the line drawing, which is black, in multiplied mode will darken everything that's below. And as you can see, our gray bunny, it's gray. Therefore, the black will darken everything. And this is exactly what we want. The third group of layer modes is what we call the lightening modes. Lighten, screen, color dodge, and linear dodge. So if, for example, if I go to lighten, you will notice that these top colors will lighten anything that's below them. Therefore, the color, in this case, the gray value study of our bunny, has to be darker for the top color to affect it. Black cannot lighten white, for example, but white can lighten black. And that's why these colors are lightening the colors below this layer. So I'm gonna check out what these guys do. I get pretty cool effects on my color. I have a feeling that it's right here where I'm gonna find my color. All right, let me try lighten color. Okay, this is a little bit too much. The fourth group is what we call the contrasting modes. We have overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, and hard light. The fifth group is what we call the inversion or comparative modes. These pretty much affect what's below them in an inversion mode. For example, as a negative photograph, right? They will transform the bottom colors to an opposite direction. So whatever's light becomes dark, whatever's dark becomes light. And they have very interesting effect on grayscales. The last group is what we call the hue and saturation. So this one, for example, the color cannot alter the hue of the gray bunny because there's no hue in grays. There's no colors in grays. Therefore, the color layer cannot affect the bottom layer. When I go to saturation, you will notice that the color becomes saturated only in the white areas. And if I go to color, it colorizes whatever is below it. So this is a great example to tweak the colors below. Now, if I go to luminosity, What this does is the color layer will change the luminosity of the bottom layer. If I have a dark color, for example, this blue right here in the middle will darken everything below that, and any color that is light will lighten whatever is below it. Now I have realized that between color and overlay, I'm getting some very interesting areas. Even soft light was able to give me some really cool areas. Alright, so one thing that I've noticed is that these grays were a little bit on the dark side. So I have a different version of my bunny, this one right here. I modified this by going to hue and saturation under image adjustments, hue and saturation, and I was able to bring in a little bit of white with, so I ended up with something lighter like this. This was the original and this is my lighter version, and now I can see that the colors are reacting better and I'm getting something very nice right here. The soft light is giving me a really nice color right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my marquee selection tool and I'm gonna select a really thin strip of our color layer. Now if I go back to normal mode, I can see that this is the color that I want. So I'm gonna hit I for the eyedropper, which is right here on our toolbox. I'm gonna zoom out, and now I'm gonna deselect by going to select, deselect. Since my layer is not locked, I'm gonna lock my transparency. And what I can do with a brush, and I'm gonna make my brush bigger, Alt right mouse button on a PC and Control and Option on a Mac, and then drag your left mouse button left and right to make the brush bigger, and up and down to make it soft or hard. And I'm going to paint on my color layer under soft light the entire thing with that blue color that I've selected. And here it is. This is how I was able to find the very first color that I'm going to use for my character. And this color is primarily going to be used for the areas of the armor. And again, once I have the color, this doesn't mean that I'm married to it. I can also use my hue and saturation and play around with that color again. I'm going to lighten it a little bit, and I'm going to increase my saturation. I'm going to move left and right, see if I can find something better. And as you can see, I've moved a little bit towards the blue, so I'm going to hit OK. Now I can always duplicate this soft light layer, and this is twice the intensity as one single soft light layer. So I can also experiment and move around, see if this will give me something interesting. And right now I'm just experimenting. I'm going through all my layer modes, and I'm finding out that I really like what a little bit of color does to this character. So this is how we find colors for our characters, by experimenting with our layer modes.